Everyone, it's LS, and this is going to be the new place for the patch rundowns, amongst other types of videos that I'm going to be making, such as itemization, champion reveals, and just generalized thoughts on the meta and anything that's really going on. Obviously, Season 11 has already started, and I've already done my patch rundown on my main channel, so we're just going to retouch on some of the things that are happening right now, as well as I'm going to go into one of the really big requests that a lot of people had on Reddit, Twitter, and elsewhere, which was my comments about ADC itemization and tanks, and my basic fears with the Riot balance team and what's going to end up happening. Generally, Season 11 so far, coming out on 11.1, it doesn't really actually have too many balance changes that are too different from 10.25. We've seen some items end up getting hit a little bit, and changes to the champions mostly haven't actually been that impactful. Some of the hotfix patches or hotfix changes that were added into the patch aren't actually really that meaningful to some of the champions. I know a lot of people were actually tweeting at me that Ivern was going to end up being crippled, given that he's pretty popular, well, I don't know if he's popular, but he's definitely a strong champion right now. And if you actually take time to look at his AP inside of the game and then factor that into what the nerf does to his AP ratio, it doesn't actually do a whole lot, especially not if you go for the Redemption and the Mikhail's Blessing itemization path on Ivern Jungle. It's not really being hit that hard whatsoever. On the flip side, tanks, Sunfire Cape has opened up basically an entirely new world, where previously Sunfire Cape users, one of the problems that they would have is that they were gated by CDR. What this ended up meaning is that anyone who really built Sunfire Cape didn't get access to high CDR values, because they would go for Sunfire Cape and then they would go for something else, like a magic resist item that would maybe give 10% CDR or something, and then after that they would maybe pick up Thornmail or something, and again, no CDR, and they're not finding CDR anywhere. Now, so many items have ability haste, but then on top of that, Sunfire gives ability haste. What this ends up meaning is that tank champions who previously didn't have access to such utility due to the lack of CDR now have CDR because of Sunfire Cape. This opens up a whole new world of balance because they're getting access to combos, more frequent damage output due to the ability to use spells more often, while still being pretty tanky. So now you have Sunfire Cape being a really powerful core 1 item, but then all the items after that really don't feel that good. Sunfire is really, really strong because it comes with a lot of kick once you complete it, and it just is a boatload of stats that allows some champions to keep up and deal damage in terms of utility and just raw damage output, where they otherwise previously couldn't before. This makes champions like Shen a lot stronger than he was before because his ultimate comes up a lot more, his E comes up a lot more, his W comes up a lot more frequently. This makes jungle Shen really scary. Things like this aren't really being looked at. A lot of things that people have been complaining about, like Gale Force and healing and all these other things, they're not really touched upon in 11.1, and with Riot's balance change philosophy, we're probably not going to see any sort of changes until 11.3 or 11.4 because Riot operates off of 2 patches in the past because they rely on pro play. So what this means is that we have to wait for pro play to commence next week, and then after pro play commences, 11.3, 11.4 is probably going to be the first real patch of the season with meaningful or sizable changes. Now obviously we do have some potential really big changes coming in with the newly mentioned champions. You have the Ruin King finally coming into League and whatnot. And so we'll see when he ends up dropping, what that ends up meaning, and how that maybe can alter 11.2 or 11.3. Doesn't really matter. Anyways, let's get into the meat of the ADC versus tank item dilemma right now. So, AD carries, tanks, these types of itemization. Bruisers, they're also in somewhat of a weird spot with like follow-up items, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, mostly, but marksmen, they just have the best build path. They curve out, again, the smoothest and whatnot. Obviously, a lot of people, everyone's been seeing all the hype around Gale Force right now and what it's allowing certain marksmen to do because they gain access to essentially a new ability. And that's making it more problematic to deal with some of them. A lot of the most problematic champions that exist in the meta right now are considered to actually be some of the marksman champions that are dominating a lot right now at the higher tiers anyway. When LCS, LCK, LPL, when all these leagues do end up resuming though, I am a little bit worried. I do imagine that we're still going to see things like Renekton, we're going to see things like Olaf, we're going to see a lot of bad things still end up getting picked again because, as always, when you come out of preseason, there's a lot of recency bias with solo queue. and there's a lot of results-based type of analysis on certain things, and so what I imagine to happen is that there's going to be a lot of early aggression, snowball-y type champions that are reliant on getting leads they'll start, and that'll basically set the tone for the initial meta pretty much everywhere. And so that's pretty much that. Other champions that aren't really getting a whole lot of attention, though, are utility champions. Utility champions is mostly because of Forbidden Idol. A lot of champions that have shields or heals or anything like this, Forbidden Idol is pretty much the only item I think in the game that you can really argue is comparable with some of the marksman items that you can end up picking up as recipe components. Forbidden Idol is pretty gross on champions like Soraka, like Ivern, like Karma, like Lulu, things of this nature. For 800 gold, you just get a lot of value. It's really easy to slot in. It scales with base level, which is what not a lot of items can actually do that much, especially if you don't have really high AP ratios or something like that. It just makes everything really nice and it curves well. The other thing about all of the utility items, Michaela's Crucible, Redemption, Staff of Flowing Water. So that item, along with Ardent Sensor, they all pretty much have the same build path. And that makes everything really easy. They work very well with one another. Champions that can use multiple shields inside of a fight on different targets really quickly, or if you have AoE shields or AoE heals, these items get really, really, really gross because, again, they're very powerful with base levels when it comes to healing and shielding. So I feel like champions that do these things aren't being looked at as much as they should, and I think that champions that can do these things are also viable in mid-top lane as support utility carries, and even in the marksman role. I think that champions like Soraka are actually stronger now than she was in the past, even when Reckless was trying to play her on Fnatic, and the games weren't really going well, and for some reason Soraka got blamed rather than other picks. We could see stuff like that. I think it's totally fine, and I think that that's one of the undersung things that are happening right now in the patch. So things like this, definitely going to get mixed up. If marksman items do end up getting buffed in some way, I really fear for what it means by patch 11.7, 11.8, 11.9, or something of that regard. Obviously, I mentioned earlier on in this video about the Ruin King coming out. That's going to be interesting. I guess he's slated to be a jungler, which I think is kind of cool because jungle is actually one of the roles right now where it is having a lot of diversity, but no one's really totally sure of what exists there. And so I think that if he comes in as a really big threat, he'll warp the meta around him. At the time of this video, none of his stats or anything like that actually exist. His abilities are out. You can actually see his abilities and what they end up doing. His abilities look pretty cool. I love his ultimate. I think his passive, I think other stuff that he has going on, it's really, really cool. He's definitely going to be an excellent champion. Who knows if he's able to do stuff other than jungle, but I'm really excited about that, and I'm really excited about all the other champions that Riot is releasing. Now, obviously enough about patch notes and champion changes. The real part of the video, of course, is always about the skins. The skins are the most important part, right? Wouldn't be able to make $1.75 billion without you. And so it is extremely important that you remember the skins. And speaking of skins, you can see the T1 jersey here, which is fantastic. This is going to be the 2021 spring jersey by T1, and currently there's no chroma editions, but that's totally fine. Maybe they'll come on later into the future, who really knows? That's going to be up to Joe. Alright, that's going to be it for this video, and as I mentioned previously, all the future patch note rundowns, champion reveals, itemization, things of that nature, they're all going to be appearing here on T1 Fighting, and so subscribe if you're looking to see that type of content. If you have some other type of stuff that you'd like to see me and T1 end up producing, then feel free to leave a comment in the comment section below, and I will see you guys in the next one, but I am very busy because I gotta get back to watching the best League of Legends player in the world, Tyler 1.